Building the chain. With his two main assets in place, Abraham Woodhull, Samuel Culper, on Long Island, and Robert Townsend, Samuel Culper Jr., deep inside New York City, Benjamin Talmadge now faced his greatest logistical challenge: building a secure supply chain for information. It was a 55-mile problem. The distance from British-occupied New York City to Woodhull's farm in Setauket was 55 miles, every inch of it crawling with redcoats, loyalist patrols, and suspicious locals. Then the information had to cross the heavily patrolled Long Island Sound to Talmadge in Connecticut. A single captured message, a single panicked confession, would bring the entire network crashing down. Talmadge, the meticulous spy master, knew the chain could have no weak links. He needed two more people: a land courier and a water courier. The land courier had to be someone who could travel those 55 miles to and from New York City regularly without raising suspicion. A soldier couldn't do it. A known patriot couldn't do it. Even Woodhull, the nervous farmer, found the regular trips too taxing and dangerous. They needed a ghost. They found Austin Roe. Roe was the perfect cover. He was the robust, boisterous, and well-liked owner of the Rose Tavern in Setauket. He was known to everyone, and his business gave him a flawless, ironclad excuse to travel. He had to ride to New York City regularly to buy supplies for his tavern: rum, tea, sugar, and, most importantly, gossip. British officers, seeing him on the road, would wave him through. He was just the rum guy. Roe agreed to the treacherous job. He became the ring's vital artery. He would ride into New York, tie his horse at Townsend's shop, and receive a seemingly innocent letter, with its deadly secrets hidden in invisible ink, or a coded message. He would then ride the 55 miles back, a journey that took over a day, navigating checkpoints and patrols, with the fate of the army tucked into his boot. But Roe couldn't deliver the message directly to Woodhull. That was too risky. If Roe were ever followed, he would lead the British straight to Samuel Culper. This is where the system became truly brilliant. Roe would ride to a secluded pasture on Woodhull's farm, a field invisible from the main road. There, under a specific tree, he would stash the message in a hidden dead drop, a simple wooden box buried in the dirt. He would then ride home, his hands clean. Later, Woodhull, after ensuring he wasn't being watched, would retrieve the message. Now he had the intelligence, but how would he get it across the water? This required the final link: the water courier. Caleb Brewster was a born daredevil. He was a professional whaleboat captain, known up and down the Sound for his skill and his almost reckless bravery. He had grown up with Talmadge and Woodhull, and he hated the British with a passion. His job was simple in paper, but nearly suicidal in practice. He would row his 30-foot whaleboat with a crew of hand-picked silent men across the British-patrolled Sound in the dead of night. He had to dodge Royal Navy gunships and patrol boats, any of which could blast his small boat out of the water with a single cannon shot. Caleb was ready, but this created one last critical problem.
The Long Island Sound is vast. Woodhull couldn't just go to the beach and wait for Brewster. He might wait for days, exposing himself. And Brewster couldn't just land and wait for Woodhull. He'd be captured by a patrol. They needed a signal. They needed a way for Woodhull to know, from his farm miles inland, that Brewster was here, right now, and ready for the pickup. they turned to the most unlikely operative of all, Anna Strong. Anna was Woodhull's neighbour, a fierce patriot in her own right. Her husband, Selah Strong, had been arrested by the British and was rotting on the infamous prison ship Jersey. Left alone to manage her farm, she was filled with a code-calculated rage. She was also perfectly invisible to the British. She was just a lonely housewife. She and Talmadge devised a system so simple, so feminine, that no British soldier would ever think to look at it twice. She used her laundry. Anna's house was on a high point of land, visible both from Woodhull's farm and from the Sound. On her clothesline, she would hang her laundry as a complex secret code. The system was this: the black petticoat. If Anna hung her black petticoat on the line, it was the master signal. It meant Caleb Brewster had successfully crossed the Sound and was hidden in one of 6 coves. The handkerchiefs, the number of white handkerchiefs hung next to the petticoat, told Woodhull which of the 6 coves Brewster was in. 4 handkerchiefs meant Cove 4. 2 handkerchiefs meant Cove 2. It was a magic clothesline. Now, the full, absurdly complex and beautifully secured chain was complete. Step 1. Townsend, or Culper Jr., gathers intelligence in NYC. Step 2. Austin Rowe, the tavern keeper, transports it 55 miles to a dead drop in Settlecott. Step 3. Woodhull, or Culper Sr., retrieves the message. Step 4. Anna Strong, the housewife, hangs a black petticoat and the specific number of handkerchiefs. Step 5. Woodhull sees the signal, knows where to go, and delivers the dispatch. Step 6. Caleb Brewster, the whaleboat captain, rows the message across the Sound. Step 7. Benjamin Talmadge, or John Bolton, receives it and rides it to General Washington. This was the Ghost Network. It was slow, taking almost 2 weeks for a message to complete its journey. It was convoluted, and it was run by a farmer, a merchant, a tavern keeper, a housewife, and a whaleboater. It was the most effective weapon George Washington had. And as the summer of 1780 approached, this bizarre group of civilian spies was about to be tested. A British plot was brewing that could end the French alliance before it even began, and only the Ghost Network could stop it.
The invisible ink saves an alliance. The summer of 1780 brought a flicker of desperate hope to the American cause. On July 11th, a massive French fleet, carrying 5,500 elite soldiers under the command of General Rochambeau, appeared off the coast of Newport, Rhode Island. After years of diplomatic struggle, America's crucial alliance with France was finally real. These weren't just supplies. They were a professional army, a powerful navy, and a tangible threat to British supremacy. George Washington was overjoyed. This was the moment he had prayed for. In New York City, General Sir Henry Clinton was enraged. He saw this not as a threat, but as an opportunity for annihilation. Clinton, a brilliant if cautious strategist, knew the French were vulnerable. Their long, grueling Atlantic crossing had left their troops sick and their ships in need of repair. They were boxed in at Newport, unfamiliar with the terrain. If he could strike, and strike now, he could wipe out the entire French expeditionary force in one devastating blow and end the American rebellion for good. It was a brilliant plan. It was meticulously organized, and it was completely secret. Or so he thought. Inside New York City, Robert Townsend, the quiet Quaker, the unassuming merchant, Samuel Culper Jr., was listening. In his coffee house, he served drinks to swaggering British officers who spoke too loudly about their upcoming holiday in Rhode Island. As a journalist, he picked up scraps of information at the printer's shop about supply requisitions, an unusual amount of hardtack, ammunition, and transport vessels being readied for sea. He saw troops drilling at the docks, not for parade, but for an amphibious landing. Townsend, a man who lived in the shadows, was a master at connecting dots no one else saw. He pieced together the fragments, the ships, the troops, the destination. He knew. On the night of July 19th, Townsend sat in his back room and drafted his most dangerous dispatch yet. Between the lines of a simple business letter about stocking dry goods, he used the invisible, sympathetic stain to lay out the entire British plan. He detailed the specific regiments, the number of transports, and the name of the target, Newport. He then activated the chain. The next morning, Austin Rowe, the tavern keeper, arrived in New York City on his regular supply run. He met Townsend, exchanged pleasantries, and received the seemingly innocent letter. Tucked deep within his boot, the dispatch, containing the single most important secret of the war, began its perilous 55-mile journey. Rowe's ride was a gauntlet of terror. He was a known civilian, which gave him a pass, but it didn't make him invisible. He rode through British-held territory, his heart pounding at every checkpoint, every bored sentry who waved him through. These soldiers were looking for deserters and armed rebels, not a simple tavern owner. That was the genius of Talmadge's plan. Rowe was hidden in plain sight. He rode for hours, the fate of the Franco-American alliance chafing against his heel. He finally reached Setauket, bypassing the village and heading straight for the desolate pasture owned by Abraham Woodhull. He found the secret dead drop, the buried wooden box, and left the dispatch. His part was done. Now it was Woodhull's turn. Samuel Culper Sr., the nervous, anxious farmer, retrieved the message under the cover of dusk. He returned to his home, locked the door, and held the letter over a candle flame. As the heat hit the paper, the secret writing bloomed into existence. Woodhull's blood ran cold. He didn't just see a plan. He saw the end of the war. He saw the French fleet in flames, the American cause betrayed, and a hangman's noose waiting for all of them. He had to get this message out, now. He ran to his farm's highest point and looked toward the shore, his eyes fixed on the home of Anna Strong. He prayed for the signal. The next morning it appeared, a black petticoat flapping in the breeze. This was it. Caleb Brewster, the daredevil whaleboat captain, was in the area and ready. Woodhull looked closer, counting the white handkerchiefs beside the petticoat. 6. He knew exactly which of the 6 hidden coves Brewster was waiting in. Woodhull raced to the cove, handed the dispatch to Brewster, and watched as the small boat pushed off into the dark, treacherous waters of the Long Island Sound. Brewster, a man who seemed to fear nothing, navigated his boat past the Royal Navy patrols, any one of which could have blown his tiny craft out of the water. He rowed all night, the oars muffled, his eyes scanning the darkness. He landed in Fairfield, Connecticut, and threw the dispatch to Benjamin Talmadge. Talmadge, John Bolton, read the message, and his own panic set in. He was 150 miles from General Washington, who was in North Castle, New York. Talmadge got on his horse and rode. He didn't stop for food, he didn't stop for rest, swapping horses as he went. He rode like a man possessed, because he was. On July 21st, a dust-covered, exhausted Talmadge burst into General Washington's headquarters and slapped the dispatch onto his desk. Washington read it, and for the first time in months, the desperate general had the one thing he needed: certainty. He knew Clinton's exact plan. He knew the troop numbers. He knew the target. He knew the timeline.
But this knowledge created a new, terrible problem. He couldn't just march his army to Newport. He was too far away, and Clinton would get there first. He couldn't send a warning to the French. A captured messenger would expose his entire spy network. If the British ever learned he had a ghost network inside their New York headquarters, the ring would be hunted, and his eyes would be plucked out forever. He had to stop Clinton's attack without Clinton realizing he'd been discovered. Washington, the spy master general, decided to fight deception with deception. He couldn't win a battle, so he would win a mind game. He sat down and drafted a series of fake dispatches. He filled them with what seemed to be his real plans, a detailed, full-scale assault on New York City. He wrote that with Clinton and his 8,000 best troops sailing for Rhode Island, New York would be left defenseless. He outlined specific targets, river crossings, and rendezvous points for his impending attack. He then called in a trusted courier and gave him explicit, secret instructions on how to get captured. The courier rode straight into a British patrol and, after a brief struggle, let the dispatch bag fall into enemy hands. The fake plans were rushed to General Clinton's headquarters. When Clinton read them, he was horrified. It was his worst nightmare. The old fox, Washington, had been waiting for this very moment. He was about to lose New York, the crown jewel of the British military, or for a risky gamble in Newport. Doubt, the great killer of strategy, infected the British command. Clinton suddenly saw traps everywhere. Was Washington's plan real, or was it a bluff? He couldn't be sure, and if he couldn't be sure, he couldn't risk leaving. He argued with Admiral Arbuthnot. The attack was delayed. Then it was delayed again. The perfect window of opportunity, the element of surprise, was gone, slammed shut by a ghost. Frustrated and paralyzed by Washington's masterful deception, Clinton officially cancelled the entire Newport campaign. The French were saved, the alliance was secure, and they never knew why. The Culper Spy Ring had just won the most important invisible battle of the war, solidifying its place as George Washington's most powerful and most secret weapon.
The language of shadows. The victory in saving the French fleet in 1780 proved two things to Benjamin Tallmadge. His network was incredibly effective. He had been extraordinarily lucky. The entire operation had relied on a single invisible message not being discovered. What if Austin Row had been stopped and searched? What if the British, suspicious of his frequent trips, had found the sympathetic stain, the invisible ink, and the chemical developer? The entire plan and the identities of everyone involved would have been exposed. Luck, Tallmadge knew, was not a strategy. As the war intensified, so did the hunt for spies. He needed a new layer of security. He needed a system where even if a message was intercepted and the invisible ink was revealed, it would still be meaningless to the enemy. He decided to create an entirely new secret language. Tallmadge, the meticulous cavalry officer turned spy master, sat down and created one of the most effective cryptographic tools of the war, the Culper Codebook. It was not just a simple cipher, it was a comprehensive system, a devil's dictionary, designed for maximum security and maximum confusion. Here is how it worked. First, Tallmadge and Washington created a list of 763 essential words, names, and places. Each one was assigned a unique 3-digit number. 711 meant George Washington.
727 meant New York. 728 meant Long Island. 729 meant Setauket. 726 meant gallows. The spies themselves were given their own code numbers, known only to the inner circle. 721 was Benjamin Tolmage, John Bolton. 722 was Abraham Woodhull, Samuel Culper Sr. 723 was Robert Townsend, Samuel Culper Jr. 724 was Austin Rowe. 725 was Caleb Brewster. Even the word spy was encoded as 744. Second, for any word not in the 763-word dictionary, like battalion, musket, or strategy, they created a complex substitution cipher for all the 26 letters of the alphabet. For example, A might equal G, B might equal X, and so on. Now, look at the nightmarish process this created for the spies. Robert Townsend, or Culper Jr., after a long day of listening to British officers in his New York coffee shop, would lock himself in his back room by candlelight. His hands, surely shaking, would begin the grueling task of encoding. If he wanted to write, "Washington is waiting for 10,000 troops to attack New York," he couldn't just write it in invisible ink. He would have to translate it. Washington became 711. Troops was not in the book, so he would have to spell it out using the letter cipher. For example, TROOPS might become ZKFFAM. Attack might be 288. New York became 727. The final message would be a terrifying, nonsensical jumble of numbers and scrambled letters. 711 is waiting for 10,000 ZKFFAM to 288 727. Then, and only then, would he write this coded gibberish between the lines of a normal business letter using the invisible ink. This system was a stroke of genius. It created 3 layers of security. The courier, the messenger, was a civilian, hidden in plain sight. The ink, the message itself, was physically invisible. The code, even if the messenger was caught and the ink was discovered, the resulting message was still an unreadable block of code, meaningless without the code book. But it came at a terrible psychological cost. The process was painfully slow. It added days to the communication line, and the mental strain on Townsend and Woodhull, who had to decode these messages, was immense. Every night spent translating was a night they risked a British patrol banging on the door. This new hardened system of secret communication was completed in the summer of 1780, and it arrived not a moment too soon. Because the Culper Ring was about to stumble upon the single most explosive secret of the entire war. A name that every patriot revered as a hero was secretly communicating with the British, plotting a betrayal that would hand victory to the king. The spies were about to cross paths with America's greatest hero and its most infamous traitor, Benedict Arnold. The Great Betrayal. In the fall of 1780, a rot had set deep into the heart of the American cause, and its name was Benedict Arnold. To the American public, Arnold was a superstar, a living legend. He was the hero of Saratoga, the brilliant, fearless general who had limped his way into immortality, his leg shattered in service to his country. But privately, Arnold was a man consumed by bitterness. He was deeply in debt, passed over for promotions, and felt the Continental Congress had repaid his sacrifice with nothing but disrespect. His new young loyalist wife, Peggy Shippen, fanned the flames of his resentment. So, the hero decided to become a vendor. He would sell his country for cash. His buyer was General Henry Clinton in New York. His broker was Major John Andre, Clinton's charming, dashing, and ambitious intelligence chief. The item for sale was not just a fort, it was the Gibraltar of America. It was West Point. This massive stone fortress, perched high above the Hudson River, was the key to the entire continent. It controlled all travel and communication between New England and the southern colonies. If West Point fell, the colonies would be split in two. The war would be over. For £20,000, millions in today's money, General Benedict Arnold, the new commander of West Point, agreed to hand it over to the British. This was the most devastatingly secret plot of the war. But in New York City, Robert Townsend, Samuel Culper Jr., was listening. In his coffee shop, he heard things. He heard whispers of a massive British operation, something bigger than Newport. He heard Major Andre's name spoken in hushed, excited tones. He noted the sudden confidence among high-ranking officers. Townsend, the master of piecing together fragments, knew something terrible was happening at the highest levels. He didn't know the specifics. He didn't know the target, but he knew the smell of treason. Using the Culper codebook, he crafted his most alarming message yet. He couldn't name Arnold, he didn't have the proof, but he sent a terrifying warning through the chain. 7-Eleven must be warned. We have intelligence that a general officer in the American Army is secretly communicating with 727, New York, and General Clinton. The message, written in invisible ink and encoded in numbers, made its perilous 55-mile journey. Austin Rowe carried it. Abraham Woodhull decoded it. Anna Strong set her signal. Caleb Brewster rode it across the Sound. When it reached Benjamin Talmadge, he was deeply troubled. A general officer? The very idea was sickening. He passed the warning to Washington, but it was too vague. Who? Where? The fog of war was too thick. The plot was set to climax on September 21, 1780. Major Andre sailed up the Hudson on the British warship Vulture. He slipped ashore under a flag of truce and met Arnold in the pre-dawn darkness. Arnold gave him the fatal documents. Detailed maps of West Point's defenses, troop strength, and the secret signals. To get back to British lines, Andre made a fatal mistake. Instead of returning to the ship, he chose to ride south by land, disguised as a civilian and using the fake name John Anderson. He was almost in the clear when, near Tarrytown, 3 local militiamen, scruffy, opportunistic, and fiercely patriotic, jumped out from the woods. They stopped him, they searched him, and in his boot they found the papers. They saw the maps, they saw Benedict Arnold's signature. They couldn't believe their eyes. They had just captured the most important spy in the world. And here is where the Culper Spy Ring re-enters the story with dramatic force. The captured spy, John Anderson, was taken to the nearest American Army post. And who was the senior intelligence officer at that post? Major Benjamin Talmadge. The moment Talmadge saw the prisoner, his blood ran cold. He knew this man. He had seen him in society before the war, seen his flamboyant signature on letters. This John Anderson was no simple courier. This was Major John Andre, the head of British intelligence. Suddenly, Townsend's coded warning about a general officer flashed in Talmadge's mind. He looked at the documents. He saw Arnold's handwriting. He put the pieces together.